All right. Good evening. And Deb, I just want to confirm that we've started the recording. I could just see a thumbs up Deb? Yep. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessie Bond, and I am the city manager for the city of Mercer Island. I apologize for the delay. We're having some audio challenges, of course. Uh, again, I do apologize. I am working off my phone here, and Jeff Thomas, the planning director, is in another location. So we're going to try to make this work. Thank you again for joining us. This is a webinar format. What we'll be doing is walking through a slide deck that the planning department has prepared to provide you with some information about the growth management hearing board order this city received from the state of Washington, the work we're doing. And then what we wanted to let you know is using your chat function, if you want to send in any questions, we are going to do our best to answer them during the webinar. If we're not able to answer them during the webinar, then we will make sure we follow up and get written responses to all your questions and get them all posted to the Let's Talk page. So with that, Jeff, I am going to turn the floor over to you. I'll ask you to introduce yourself to our audience, and then I believe we have a PowerPoint to share.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jessie, and good evening to everyone who's watching as we go live here. So I'm Jeff Thomas, the Community Planning and Development Director. We have a few of our staff on the call tonight as well to help support behind the scenes. We've got about 30 slides to walk through in a few different sections. So if we can advance to the next slide, please. We're going to cover this presentation in three major components. We're going to do a short background section that's going to talk a little bit in general about the Growth Management Act and what a comprehensive plan is. And then we're going to move into section 2, which is going to cover the Growth Management Hearings Board order. And then from there, we're going to look forward a little bit to the city's compliance strategy as it's been formulating over the last couple months, working with our city council and also with our legal team. And then to wrap things up, we will just touch briefly on next steps beyond tonight and show you a very high level schedule of what we anticipate will happen between today and the end of July. So with that, next slide, please. And next one. Perfect. Okay, so getting into part one, a little bit about the Growth Management Act and comprehensive planning. The Growth Management Act is a series of state statutes that was initially adopted in 1990, a long time ago now. And the purpose of the Growth Management Act, otherwise referred to as GMA, is to manage growth and protect critical areas and natural resource lands. It requires local jurisdictions to a large degree in the state of Washington to adopt comprehensive plans to guide growth and development over a 20-year planning period. Comprehensive plans, they need to be consistent with the GMA and all the tenets of GMA, as well as regional and countywide planning policies in a jurisdiction's respective county. I think it's also worth saying that GMA has been updated over the years periodically, and we're certainly going to get into that a little bit later in the presentation tonight with some recent updates that have occurred since 2021. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan is basically a document that pulls together a vision and goals and policies and implementing actions that a city is going to take on to manage growth, again, during that 20-year planning period. The comprehensive plan is implemented essentially through development regulations, capital investments in projects, as well as other projects and special programs. The graphic over here on the right shows essentially the elements of a comprehensive plan, or chapters. Think of them as chapters. These are the elements or chapters in the Mercer Island Comprehensive Plan. Of note, the economic development element was a new element that Mercer Island just added in 2024 to its comprehensive plan. And I don't think it's by accident. Our staffer that pulled this slide together placed housing square in the middle of the eight elements here. And we're going to be getting into talking about the city's housing element, which was a focal point of this GMA compliance effort that we're embarking on. Next slide, please. Okay, just real quick here. So planning under GMA, as you can see from the map on the right, most cities and counties in Washington are required to plan to some degree under GMA. Um, Key thing here to note is that comprehensive plans, even though it's a 20-year planning period, a comprehensive plan has to undertake a periodic update every 10 years. So you're at point X in time and you plan for the next 20 years, but then 10 years later, you need to plan again and update, and then you look 20 years out again. What does it do during that periodic update? Uh, Plan for updated growth projections, ensuring adequate land capacity is available for housing and employment needs. Infrastructure planning needs to be updated for transportation, utilities, and capital facilities to maintain required levels of service or set levels of service. And then also to incorporate recent updates that may come across. And in this case, again, dialing things in here a little bit to tonight, um, we're going to be talking about planning for and accommodating affordable housing across a variety of income levels. So we'll be getting to that here in the slide deck. As you can see, just one final time with the graphic on the right, Snohomish King and Pierce and Kitsap counties were required to complete their comprehensive plan periodic updates in 2024. There were a bunch of other Western Washington jurisdictions that needed to do it by the end of 25, and then you start to get the rest of the way across the state for 26 and 27 updates. Next slide, please. Okay, so to Mercer Island. Planning for affordable housing is going to be our focal point here and is the focal point of the GMA compliance matter at hand. House Bill 1220 was a piece of state legislation that was passed in 2021, and it has a variety of components to it. One of the primary components is looking at each jurisdiction's affordable housing needs and coming up with what affordable housing is going to be required in each jurisdiction. So the graphic here on the screen describes Mercer Island's affordable housing needs and affordable housing target assignments that were supplied to us by King County. So this graphic basically, the black box on the left that says total housing target, that is the total number of units. And then the series of columns as you work your way from left to right over to where it says greater than 120%, those are what are called area median income bands. So you have a less than 30% area median income, 30 to 50%, 50 to 80, 80 to 100, and then 100 to 120. And then on the far right, more than 120. The housing units then is at 1,239 total number that is distributed among those income bands. So as you can see, we have a very large portion of affordable housing need that's been assigned for less than 30%. The PSH there that's noted in the light blue boxes is stands for permanent supportive housing. So we have 339 units of non-permanent supportive housing, and then 178 units of permanent supportive housing. The difference is you would have facilities that are permanent supportive housing that will actually have services and dedicated staff to a particular building or facility. We work our way over, and as you can see, we have very small numbers for 80 to 100% AMI, and then above that band as well. That's because We have what's been determined to be a sufficient number of units essentially in those particular income bands. So our needs are really identified for that 80% and below AMI. And then the last thing I'd like to point out on this slide is the box on the very far right, which is emergency housing. We are going to talk about that later as well. Sometimes it's referred to as step housing. That 237 number, that's not necessarily a unit. That can be a bed, for example, with a shelter or emergency type facility. That 237 number is not part of the 1239 number on the far left. It is over and above the 1239 number.
Jeff, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
All right. I just want to thank our audience for the patience as we were navigating behind the scenes. I do have a question now that I'm back to my computer that came in via the Q&A box, and I apologize. Earlier, I referred to it as a chat box, but now that I've got a full screen in front of me. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little box that says Q&A. If you have a question for us, type it in there. I'm going to be moderating, and when appropriate, I'll interrupt Jeff and ask the question. So Jeff, the question from the audience is if you could go over PSH and non-PSH one more time.
Sure. So PSH stands for Permanent Supportive Housing. Permanent supportive housing will be a facility or a building that will typically have dedicated services and staff for the residents that live there. So it could be counseling services, it could be other types of nursing or medical type services. Um, Non-PSH would just be more typically a building that is apartments where people live self-sufficiently without those services embedded in the actual building or facility itself.
Thank you for that.
Great. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. Okay, so um, the Mercer Island Comprehensive Plan, the city, you'll recall from the map that was just on the screen a couple of slides ago, King County and jurisdictions within King County were required to complete a periodic update of their comprehensive plan by the end of 2024. Mercer Island successfully completed its periodic review and update. On November 19th, the council took final action to adopt an ordinance completing that particular review and update. Subsequently, after November 19th, um, the comprehensive plan update was appealed to the Washington State Growth Management Hearings Board. And the focus of the appeal was the fact that city did not provide sufficient affordable housing. So what ensued after the appeal was filed was a process that culminated um, at the end of June 2025 with a hearing in front of the Growth Management Hearings Board. And on the heels of that hearing with the board, they issued a final decision in an order on August 1st, 2025. We're going to talk here about what was in that order. Generally, it found that the city has to make changes to its comprehensive plan to comply with the Growth Management Act, GMA, regarding four issues: land capacity, adequate provisions, station sub-area planning, and anti-displacement measures. The order contained a one-year compliance period. So we are working on a deadline of July 31st of this year, 2026, to make changes to our comprehensive plan and development regulations that will comply with the four issues in the order, again, in a timely fashion by the end of July. Next slide, please. Okay, and just to wrap up this section, just a few quick notes here on the Growth Management Hearings Board. It is a state body that hears appeals of comprehensive plans and development regulations related to compliance with the Growth Management Act. Members of the Growth Management Hearings Board are appointed by the governor, and challenges to Comprehensive plans or development regulations related to growth management are heard by a three-member panel that determines if those requirements have been met or not. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that concludes the first part of the presentation. Jesse, I'll just pause here briefly if there's anything you wanted to add or any questions that we might take and try and wrap up before we move forward.
No, I think you're okay to proceed. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, great. Then let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to start this section about the order itself with just taking a little bit closer look at these four issues that I just described a couple slides ago. So the first issue again was land capacity. Um, the action that was identified by the Growth Management Hearings Board was to go back and analyze residential land capacity on Mercer Island at each housing affordability level. Those are those AMI levels I referred to earlier, and to close or solve any identified gaps. That folds into the next issue, which is adequate provisions, which involves adopting incentives, mandatory provisions, and or planned actions that will increase the supply of affordable housing. Think of adequate provisions as um, assists, basically, things that will help affordable housing develop in the community over and above the basic zoning that's been put in place. The next item involves a station sub-area plan. As probably most of you that are listening tonight or watching are aware, Mercer Island has a light rail station that's going to be opening here in 2026. And part of the regional planning efforts that have been done in King, Snohomish, and Pierce and Kitsap counties involves um, station sub-area planning for those communities that have one or more light rail stations, fixed stations within their jurisdiction. And then the fourth issue is anti-displacement measures. Those essentially are measures to address potential displacement of residents that can occur with changes in zoning and redevelopment. And the board, as part of the board order, they have directed the city to go and look and develop those. So again, we're going to say it a few more times this evening. The compliance deadline for all of this work to be done is July 31st. And we have been working on a scope and schedule to do that successfully in a timely fashion.
So, Jeff, I am going to interrupt here because I've had a couple questions come in, and I think they probably sequence better with the material you just wrapped up. So, can you clarify again? The question is the original plan submitted and the questions relating to our comprehensive plan in 2024 was appealed because it did not meet the numbers under House Bill 1220. So I think the question is, could you just go over again why our plan was appealed? And Madeline, if you're driving the slide deck, maybe we could back up a couple slides. There we go.
Yeah, so I could probably talk for the next 3 hours about the intricacies of the appeal and the language in the appeal, but I think it's fair to say with the direction that was issued by the Department of Commerce, the Washington State Department of Commerce, which oversees growth management planning activities at the state level. Um, they issued, a guidance book or, in essence, a recipe on how to complete your comprehensive plan update for 2024. And the city staff, in conjunction with a couple of consultants that were working with us, as well as um, our legal counsel, we prepared that update to what we believed was the letter of the guidance that was issued by Commerce. And so, yes, to answer the question, the appeal was based on challenges that we did not do our update in a manner that was compliant with the Growth Management Act, with state law, essentially. So the board made findings and ultimately issued the order that validated those claims, which has led to us going back and needing to um, take a look at these four issues and do additional work. Um, there were other issues that were part of the appeal that the city did prevail on. For example, there was a laundry list of countywide planning policies. I mentioned that earlier in the presentation. Um, there was a laundry list of countywide planning policies that were part of the appeal, alleging that the city did not comply with those. I believe we prevailed on almost every one of those, perhaps except for one or two. And then there was another matter that was also part of the appeal that involved King County and the Growth Management Planning Council for King County. We also prevailed on that matter as well. So the decision was a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of whether an appeal was granted or not. But these four issues are the four core things that we've been left to focus on here during this 1 year period.
For anybody that's watching tonight and would like to read the entirety of the hearing board decision, I believe we do have it posted on our Let's Talk page. Jeff, I'm going to continue to interrupt. There's one other question that I think is timely here. Madeline, can you go back to the breakdown of the units? Yeah, that's exactly what I needed. So Jeff, there's a great question coming in, and I know this is not going to be a black and white answer, but I think it would be helpful to kind of walk back through one more time how the units are assigned. So the specific question is, were other cities assigned such a large percentage of supportive and below market rate housing relative to the population and land size? And I think the plain language answer is the assignments all varied, but maybe you can just talk through how the numbers kind of come down to the cities from the top, just briefly, and then we can pick up the PowerPoint again.
Yeah, I think I've looked at, and our staff have looked at other jurisdictions. We've talked with other jurisdictions, and I think it's fair to say that we are not alone in the skewed the heavy numbers towards the lower AMI bands that you're looking at here on the screen. They're certainly proportional as well. So, for example, we're looking at what amounts to 339 non-supportive new units at under 30% AMI and 178 permanent supportive. When you look at some of the larger jurisdictions in the Puget Sound area, just Bellevue, I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head here or with me, but you're looking at numbers that are 5-digit numbers, north of 10,000, and total affordable housing needs way up in the 5 digits, up into you know 40, 50, 60,000 for the larger cities, Seattle and Bellevue. So the enormity of the task here for everyone cannot be understated. It is how these numbers were derived. King County worked on this. King County received direction. All counties received direction from the state. In our case, King County then went and they looked at our growth targets that were originally assigned back in 2022 for housing and employment numbers. They looked at the original land capacity analysis that was formulated by King County, actually, back during that same window of time. And they made these housing target assignments to all jurisdictions in King County. So we all received them at the same time. They are proportional to a city's current size, a city's capacity as it was known back when King County did that original assessment back in the 2022 year period. And this is what we came up with, or this is what was handed to us essentially by King County. So it was a process that we were not intimately involved with this part of the process, the affordable housing unit assignments. We were involved with the initial targeting for um, population and employment back in 2021 and 2022.
That's great. Thank you. I have two questions asking if you can have a copy of PowerPoint, and you absolutely can. We will be taking this and turning it into a handy PDF and posting it to our Let's Talk page. I'll try to even get that done tonight so it's fresh, but if not, for sure tomorrow. So thank you for asking that. All the material that we've shared with the council leading up to tonight's informational session and this PowerPoint are landing on our Let's Talk page. And the title of that page is, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll make sure I circle back and make sure Comprehensive Plan GMA Compliance under Mercer Island Let's Talk. Okay. The other question is, are any of the other cities being given these targets as constrained as Mercer Island? And are these housing targets also being placed into residential neighborhoods? So I think, Jeff, we can probably answer the first part of that question. That second one, we may want to hold for a bit. So are any of the other cities being given these targets as constrained as Mercer Island? That
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for any other jurisdiction, but I think it's fair to say everyone looked at what they were assigned, and there was probably some wide eyes that occurred. It certainly occurred with us, and I'm sure it occurred. I know I have talked with a few other jurisdictions specifically about that, and I would say it's fair to state that yes, there was there was some surprise that was across the board.
Yeah, in my city manager circles, this is actively being talked about. Certainly, Mercer Island's case is drawn a lot of attention, and I think most of our cities, our peer cities, are probably at about the same place we are right now, or maybe even just a bit behind us, trying to get this sorted out. So, we have some more slides to share that will walk you through more of the technical compliance side. That may help explain this a little bit more. And then I will certainly come back to the question, are these housing targets also being placed into residential neighborhoods? Because we'll start to talk about how to solve for this. Jeff, one more question for you. Does the number assigned take into account the existing numbers of affordable housing in a city, if any?
No,
They do not.
they do not.
They do not. But from this moment forward, if I'm understanding correctly, we are tracking closely the development of affordable housing units because that is one of the metrics that we have to keep track of going forward.
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Um,
We'll
if
have
we can
Madeline
go
flip
to
forward again. Thank you.
slide 12, please. There you go. Okay, so we covered the four issues related to the Growth Management Hearing Board order. We're going to go through each one here in a little bit more detail before we get to the forward thinking part of the presentation. So um, the first one again was land capacity. And as has been mentioned here in a couple of the responses that we've given, King County did an initial land capacity analysis again back in the 2021-2022 date range. The city completed what we termed as a supplemental land capacity analysis as part of the 2024 periodic update to the comprehensive plan. Um, that supplemental land capacity analysis led to the a recommendation to the city council, which they ultimately acted on to do some upzoning in the town center at the end of 2024 to accommodate that additional capacity that was identified at the time. But then again, the growth board has directed us here to do yet additional land capacity analysis to look at, again, this is the same graphic that we've talked about now a few times in this presentation over here on the right, to look at evaluating the possible number of housing units at each affordability level or AMI level, given current zoning is existing conditions and other market factors. So supplemental analysis I just mentioned a moment ago. That's what we did in 2024. Um, so what the board is really saying is that in our supplemental analysis, we aggregated, and what they want to see is disaggregation at these different AMI bands, again, that are contained in that graphic here that we've come back to a couple times already tonight. So the work in doing now this new land capacity analysis, it will help inform the city of the changes to zoning and development regulations that will be necessary to ultimately be GMA compliant. Okay, next slide, please. Issue number two, adequate provisions. Um, Again, I mentioned it earlier. Think of adequate provisions as assists in a sort of way, a combination of policies, incentives, or capacity to help meet housing needs and housing targets. So, House Bill 1220, um, we needed to we had to do serious work on our housing element in 2024. In fact, the city ended up rewriting its entire housing element that had existed from our last periodic update, which was completed in 2015. And the rewrite of the housing element that culminated with the adoption of the comp plan update in 2024 was really all about House Bill 1220 and trying to make our housing element and ultimately our comprehensive plan compliant with uh, the provisions in House Bill 1220 and ultimately the Growth Management Act. So you can see here on the right-hand side of the screen, there's several examples of what adequate provisions are. We're going to be talking about two a little later here in part three of the presentation, specifically inclusionary zoning and fee in lieu of. Um, let's see here. I think down at the bottom of the screen here, there's a little bit of almost a math equation that we've provided. Land capacity plus the assists that you can get from adequate provisions equal the addressing of your total affordable housing needs. So that is taking basically issue one that we just covered on the last slide, the development of adequate provisions and implementing them. And those two elements combine to really be the core of addressing the total affordable housing need in a community and to be able to move forward.
So Jeff, if I can just ask, I think the term adequate provisions is a super goofy term, and it's one we're stuck with now. The state uses it. But part of what the hearings board said, if I'm not mistaken, is, hey, Mercer Island, you had all of these things listed to do in your comprehensive plan, but what we actually needed you to do was get them all done
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, we as part of rewriting the housing element in 2024, we identified a list. I don't believe it was this exact list that's on the screen here, but it was certainly close to it. We identified a list of adequate provisions that we were committing to work on as part of implementing the comprehensive plan document um, moving forward from 2024 through to the next update in 10 years. And part of what the growth board advised us of in its order is that we should have had all of those um, adequate provisions completed and implemented, ready to go upon adoption of the comprehensive plan, which hasn't been historically how comprehensive plans have been implemented since 1990, but that is what we were. That was the offering from the growth board in their order to us.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to clarify for the community that, a lot of these items, these policies, these actions we needed to take were identified in our comprehensive plan and put onto the list of things we'd be working on. The growth board essentially said, you've got to get it done now. So that put us in a gas pedal down mode. I just want to acknowledge I've got quite a few questions coming in here. I know there's going to be a moment when I can pause and toss some of these back to Jeff. So I see your questions. Jeff, why don't you finish the next couple of slides so we can get through the list of the things the hearings board told us to do, and then I can toss some questions your way.
Okay, let's go to the next slide then, please. I've already talked about this a little bit, and you'll see what we're doing with the station subarea plan. This was issue 3 in the growth board order. Um, I did touch earlier with the Puget Sound Regional Council Vision 2050 establishes that multi-planning policies for the Puget Sound region, which includes King County, and of course it includes Mercer Island then. The multi-county planning policies require jurisdictions to adopt the sub-area plans for transit station areas. So that gets back to what was issue 3 was the fact that we had not done that as part of our comprehensive plan update. So that was included in the growth board order. Um, for It's important to note that the the actual definition of the station subarea plan is looking at a half-mile walking distance from a light rail station entrance. So you're going to see when we get to part 3 of our presentation here what that actually looks like for Mercer Island. But that was issue 3, and we can just move forward here to issue 4 before we pause again. Next slide, please. Thank you. Um, the the issue 4 was anti-displacement measures. And again, it's when residents will be potentially displaced due to redevelopment occurring. Um, so it's taking affordable renters and basically taking that property, redeveloping it, and trying to help those renters move on and be able to find other accommodation. So what we've got here is, again, the countywide planning policies. They refer to cities to adopt policies and strategies that promote equitable development and mitigate displacement risk. The measures must be implemented prior to or concurrent with development capacity increases and public capital investments. And They include regulations to protect tenants, and there's a couple examples here: notification requirements, relocation assistance, or right to return policies. So with that, we're going to get to another title slide here, Jesse. So if we've got a couple questions before we move on.
Yes, one of the questions was who is doing the land capacity analysis for us? And what I wanted to mention is when we received the order from the state that we were out of compliance last August, one of the first things we had to begin work on was the land capacity analysis. And so we're under contract with a company called Community Attributes. Just recently, we were in front of the council and presented a data set to the council that will be on our Let's Talk page, or it is already on our Let's Talk page. So that's who we're using for our land capacity analysis. That body of work, just to put some months to it, it was a multi-month effort to prepare that type of analysis. I am pretty certain we are the only state in Washington that has done that level of analysis now to comply with House Bill 1220. Don't quote me on that. But I know we're definitely out in front. I anticipate other cities will likely begin doing that type of analysis soon. So community attributes. What affordable housing do we currently have? I'm not sure I have, that may be a question we need to come back to and respond. We have some affordable housing here on Mercer Island. I don't believe the staff have a comprehensive list to share tonight. Would that be correct, Jeff?
Yeah, we do. We will be able to follow up in writing and provide some additional details on that. I think just quickly though, Jesse, Mercer Island has had a provision in its town center code for a number of years for when new development occurs in the town center. There has to be some below market rate housing that is part of development. And then we also do have other affordable housing elsewhere throughout the island as well. So we can definitely follow up though and provide a more detailed answer for the viewers here over the next couple days.
The other question, and I can probably answer this one, how many other cities are in the same boat with us? In other words, they were appealed. I'd rather not dive into what other cities were appealed. I can point interested folks to the Growth Management Hearing Board website where all of the various types of appeals are posted there. I know there was another round of cities that just completed their updates. Not all cities are on the same cycle, and I do understand there was at least one other city recently appealed. So that would be where you would get that information, the Growth Management Hearing Board website. All right. Also, Jeff, a technical question. This is a good one. Does when we're updating our land capacity analysis, are we taking into account critical areas, water courses, shoreline, things like trees? I would even throw in parks, I-90, the things that we want to exclude from counting where that land goes. Can you
We
talk a
are
little about that?
we well we are that is correct. Those factors are taken. They've been taken into every land capacity analysis that's been done dating back to the first one that I referenced in this presentation back in 21 or 22.
Okay, some of these other questions I'm going to hold to a little bit later, but this one, Mercer Island affordable housing numbers, our requirements from House Bill 1220 are already challenging. Is there a possibility that they might increase this number anytime soon? And I have to tell you, I don't know that I can actually answer that question because this is all coming down from state law. We have a legislative session that happens annually. There's certainly an opportunity for the legislature to revise, you know, previous laws they passed, amend bills. It would be surprising to me that that number would change and go up. We would certainly welcome some refinement. As you can see, we're dealing with staggering numbers, as are the rest of the cities. But I just don't know. I do not see, there were no bills this session that would have changed that number directly that I saw. But we get to do this every year. So if we have any other information to share, I can have our legislative analyst take a look at that question and make sure I didn't miss something when I responded as well. Okay, and I think we'll go ahead and keep going. I'm going to hold the rest of these questions so we get to the next section.
Okay, so looking forward, um, Mercer Island's path to GMA compliance, we've broken it down into six major or significant steps. I'm going to go through, I'm just going to run through each of these quickly, and then we'll talk about each one a little bit more in the next series of slides. So step one, and these are, the first couple are definitely in order, and then, the last, I guess steps one and two really, order is important, and then three through six are going to be worked on, generally speaking, concurrently here over the next handful of months. So step one, as Jesse referred to, complete land capacity analysis. We have been working on that since last fall. It took a long time. Community Attributes is the firm that Jesse referenced that has been working with us on that. Um, we did appear at council in February, and Community Attributes provided a presentation to council on their work. While not done completely, I am offering here, I think that analysis is about 75% done. And Community Attributes is continuing to work on wrapping it up, and we'll be issuing a final report here in the near future. So that land capacity analysis, it's step one here on our compliance strategy, and it also addresses issue one from the growth board order. Step two, the station area boundary. We are going to talk about that here. on a few slides, establishing that station area boundary around the light rail station. We've done a fair amount of work on that, as you'll see here in a couple slides. I estimate that's about 50% done, the work on that, and we will be returning to council on March 17th. That boundary is actually, we are in a public feedback period right now for the draft station area boundary that council asked us to proceed with and gather some public feedback on. So we will be presenting that to the council at their March 17th meeting. And then steps 3 through 6, what we're called phase one upzones, and you'll see why here in a moment. Um, we haven't started that work yet. The adequate provisions that we've discussed, we have not formally started that work yet. And the anti-displacement measures and the step housing permanent regulations, we have technically not started that work yet. We already do have interim regulations for step housing that have actually been in place in response to House Bill 1220. They've actually been in place since 2021. So we will be looking to convert those to permanent regulations here this year. And it is important to note the step housing regulations are not technically part of the growth board order, but because they are related to House Bill 1220, there it does make a lot of sense to take our interim regulations as part of the current work effort and just get those done concurrently with the rest of the GMA compliance work. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so going a little bit deeper on each of those 6 steps. Step 1, again, land capacity analysis. This graphic here is actually from the presentation our consultant did to council on February 17th. What it identifies is our consultant built a model essentially, and they looked at land capacity across the entire island. And they looked at it, they went by zoning district and they broke everything. They took it and they broke it into our need by those AMI bands and then also existing capacity by AMI band. So the result of what you get here is we have a total deficit in 2 of those income bands, 3 categories, because 0 to 30 is permanent supportive and permanent supportive and not permanent supportive. We've got a deficit of 519 units below the 50% AMI level, and that includes those 178 unit deficit of permanent supportive housing. So those red numbers on the right in parentheses, those are our deficits. You can see for income bands 50% and above, our existing zoning does have sufficient capacity to meet the affordable housing needs of those 50% and higher AMI bands. A key finding from our consultant's report, the presentation that they gave council, market rate housing just simply does not provide for less than 30% AMI housing. So, for example, when we've had town center development occur over the years, we do get affordable units from those town center developments, and they are part of those town center developments, but it's in bands that are above 50% AMI, typically that 50 to 80% AMI band or the 80 to 100% band. The market just does not produce units below 30%. So you can see from the table our allocated housing unit needs in those 0 to 30 bands. It's the exact deficit. We have no capacity for it on Mercer Island.
And so, Jeff, I imagine people are taking a look at this slide and trying to make sense of it. We've been looking at this table for a few months now. So I just want to confirm. So that first row, or I guess column, excuse me, allocated housing needs. So that's what we were assigned,
Mm-hmm.
the units. And then if I were to plain language this, I would say that the hearings board said, now go show your work, right? Tell us what the market's actually going to produce. And so we did a comprehensive analysis that produced that second column. Is that close to being right? And we're able to now produce that number on the the right that shows us what we're short.
Yeah, our need, our capacity, and then essentially one minus the other to create a surplus or a deficit. That's correct.
And so, as the city council has this information now, we've done this additional analysis, the policy work, the term we used a moment ago that I said was goofy, adequate provisions. The state is saying city of Mercer Island and all other cities eventually will have to do this as well. You have to plan for this now. You have to tell us how you are going to provide those units, that deficit. And I have some questions about that, and I'll get to that in a minute. Mostly, how are we going to do that? All right.
Okay. Next slide, please. So step two is establishing a station subarea boundary. We actually talked to council about this at their planning session on January 16th. And what happened at their January 16th session was council developed some guidelines for us to go about trying to produce a draft station subarea boundary. The four guidelines are here on the screen. So you'll recall, and it's here as well in the first bullet. The station subarea boundary is defined as a half-mile walk distance from an entrance to a light rail station. So, in the spirit of that, the council gave us four guidelines to work with. Exclude city parks, open space, and the I-90 corridor from the station area. That was guideline one. Um, Exclude any non-contiguous land area. So, for example, if a city park was to create an area of land, then that was no longer contiguous to the rest of the half-mile walking distance area, we were directed to exclude that in developing station area boundary, sub-area boundary. Guideline three was to align the remaining station area boundary with city streets. And guideline four was if that did not prove to be logical, then use existing zoning boundaries instead. So we went and did that work. That resulted in a draft boundary that was presented to the City Council on February 17th. It's that draft boundary they asked us to proceed with here in opening a public feedback period that's open through March 13th. And we're due back on March 17th at the council's second regular meeting in March to report out the results of the public feedback. Next slide, please. This is the graphic representation of what I just described, starting in the top left corner. So you see the very jagged purple line there. That is the actual half-mile walk distance as calculated in our geographic information system. And then you go to the right to guideline one, you remove the parks in the I-90 corridor. You move to the lower left of the screen, guideline two, which is removing any non-contiguous areas, which is the yellow area over there on the right-hand side, just below South Luther Burbank and right above I-90. And then guidelines three and four, which is squaring things off to streets and zoning boundaries as needed. So what those steps produce is the larger graphic on the right-hand side of the screen, which is the preliminary modified station area boundary. This is what we took to council on February 17th. And this is what they've asked us to, again, solicit public feedback on through March 13th, the end of this week. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So this is step three, which is what we're referring to as phase one upzones. Phase one appeared, I believe, a couple slides ago in the summary of the 6 steps. So what this is, the graphic on the right, this is the same outer boundary that you just saw in the previous slide after applying the four guiding principles. And what this is then is this is breaking that area out into two phases. Phase one subarea, which is the darker purple color, and the phase two subarea, which is the lavender-ish type of color. The phase one subarea is the current town center boundary plus the adjacent MF2 zoning districts that flank essentially the west and east sides of the town center boundary. So those areas have been combined into this darker purple color, and it's this phase one subarea of the larger station subarea boundary that is going to be the focus for GMA compliance between now and July 31st of this year. So within this area, there have been some upzones identified from the land capacity analysis that we talked about in step one that will be proposed to be completed to allow us to achieve GMA compliance for that issue one, the land capacity. And then phase two, and we're not going to talk about phase two tonight any further than what's on this screen here. The remainder of the station area boundary, which is the lavender color, that area will be utilized to comply with yet another bill from the state, House Bill 1491, which I believe was passed by the legislature last year. That requires cities with light rail stations to do additional upzones to an average FAR of 3.5. FAR stands for floor area ratio. And that work needs to be completed by December 31st, 2029. There is no work occurring. Uh, Again, I just want to underscore this. There is no work occurring on phase two at this time. We need to establish the entire station subarea boundary, which is what we're proposing to do with the dark outline around both phases. But the only work occurring in 2026 towards GMA compliance is in phase one, which is again the town center and the adjacent multifamily two zoning districts.
So, Jeff, this is a good moment for me to ask a question that popped in several minutes ago. And it was, are these housing targets, meaning the requirements of House Bill 1220, uh, being placed into residential neighborhoods? And I interpret that question to mean island-wide. You know, one of the things I want to just mention with all of the legislation that has passed, and there have been a number of bills over the last really kind of in rapid succession, 4 or 5 years, related to housing and housing affordability, things that change the way we issue permits and process anything from land use to a building permit. So there's a whole suite of actions the state has taken. Some of those apply citywide, island-wide. Some we still have some choice on. So what you're seeing here is your city council making a policy decision that most of this density and the affordable housing requirements will be met in the town center. And that is what we're planning for right now. And Jeff's talking about upzoning and things like that. And part of that reason, there's a lot of reasons, but we have the capacity to add additional height in town center. We have a little more capacity on the sewer and water side. That's not necessarily true island-wide. And of course, there are other reasons that taking density into the town center is the primary reason for that. The state has also said through a couple different actions, primarily that TOD bill that's coming, we have to comply with by 2029, that we will take more density around the new Sound Transit station. So we have both of these things working together. That's a little bit of an oversimplified answer. It's a little more technical than that, and I'm sure Jeff will correct anything that I said in error.
I think we're good.
All right.
Okay, then let's move to step four, which is adequate provisions. So before we get to the two specific adequate provisions that we're going to discuss here, item one on this slide So you've probably asked yourself, well, what do you mean by upzone? Well, what we've identified with the help of our consultant is to be able to get to this state of GMA compliance, we're going to be looking at upzoning the town center wide to 8 stories, and the adjacent surrounding or adjacent, excuse me, adjacent multifamily two zones to 6 stories. What that's going to do in effect is increase the capacity of that phase one area um, from 667 to 1,698 more potential units. So then we get to the assist part of this, which is the adequate provisions. We're looking at from that laundry list. You may recall the slide that had the laundry list of adequate provisions on the right-hand side of the screen in the kind of the bluish type box. We're looking at developing and implementing 2 of those adequate provisions in the short term as part of this GMA compliance effort. One is an inclusionary zoning requirement that would require 10% of all new development in this area, this phase one area, uh, for units to be affordable from 30 to 80% AMI. You'll recall from I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we just don't see less than 30% AMI units developed from the market itself. Um, and then a fee in lieu of provision, an adequate provision. Um, we're looking at establishing a fee in lieu of program for private development to pay for affordable housing as an alternative to building it. Um, Money generated from a fee in lieu of would go to support the direct delivery of less than 30% AMI units on Mercer Island. So essentially, um, the bottom line here is by upzoning, we're actually going to create more capacity than we need for 50% AMI and above units. What will happen is, as an alternative to building those units, um, there will be some development that will opt to do the fee in lieu of approach. That money then will be used to go to help support direct delivery of less than 30% AMI units. So it's it's a little bit complex to put all in one slide here, but that is the general idea that we're working with here is that these 2 adequate provisions will provide an assist to ultimately getting less than 30% AMI units on Mercer Island. Step 5, anti-displacement measures. We have not done any analysis on this yet. I think it was noted on the introductory slide to this section. We're at 0% completion on this. So what we've provided here are the 4 policies that were included in our 2024 comprehensive plan housing element. Um, Policies that again, we're going to be looking to work to implement after the comp plan was adopted, and we'll be doing it here in the short term to develop anti-displacement measures that will be ultimately included in our comprehensive plan and in our development code. And then if we move to step 6, the next slide, again, step housing. I think we can note here, step housing includes a number of different types of shelter and housing, shelters, transitional housing, emergency and permanent supportive housing. Um, we do have interim regulations that we implemented back in 2021 in regards to step housing. But again, we need to roll those into permanent regulations here at some point, and it makes sense to do it now as part of this GMA compliance effort because all of this ultimately all is a derivative of House Bill 1220. Okay, before we get to next steps, this is the last slide in this section. This is more or less a summary slide, and I know Jesse's probably going to want to weigh in here a little bit. Um, when we look at all this in its totality, I think what we get to here is the city faces a significant financial challenge when it comes to affordable housing. Um, After we do the analysis, after we do the phase one implementation, the 510 units of affordable housing, all of which is less than 30% AMI, that we're going to be left with in developing the adequate provisions and the implementation to do direct delivery, we're looking at a range of costs to construct that 510 units of 200 and essentially 265 million to 311 million. That's going to be the construction cost for those units. And that does not include infrastructure costs. As we sit here today, that cost is completely unfunded. There are $0 currently towards that effort. When we look at phase one, um, after the town center and the multifamily adjacent zones are upzoned, we're going to get that 510 deficit, or excuse me, that 519 deficit that we showed on a graphic way back at the beginning of the presentation. That will reduce itself to 510. So the upzoning will take care of a few units as part of that process. What we also anticipate, if the fee in lieu of is used to the maximum extent that it's been modeled, there could be about $30 million generated in fee in lieu of funds. So that $30 million obviously is not going to pay for much of the 510 units, but that $30 million dollars of fee in lieu of funds can be leveraged with other funding sources and other partnerships. And our work from our consultant indicates that it could lead to the direct delivery of somewhere between 170 and 200 of those remaining 510 units that need to be delivered. And again, that's all 30% AMI or less. Um, if that were to happen, we're still looking at a remaining gap of 300 to 340 units at 30% AMI and below, and still an estimated cost to construct those units of roughly 162 million to 209 million dollars. And again, no infrastructure costs are included in those numbers. So I think it's fair to say this is an extremely tall task that we're facing here on Mercer Island. And we were talking about other cities earlier in the presentation. Other cities are facing a similarly tall task as well.
All right, this is actually, let's hold here. This is a staggering number. We recently shared it with the city council. I would still call it a preliminary number. We've got some inputs we may need to adjust. We used, for example, to get to this number, we used a land cost based on average East Side cities. We may need to raise that a little bit to factor in Mercer Island land costs. So what do we do? What did the state say? Did they say you have to pay for this? Not quite. We have to plan for it. I think we are the first city that has the number. I actually believe we are the first. So think about this now across Washington State. Start multiplying the 30% AMI, 30% and under affordable housing needs across every city, and we're into the billions of dollars of affordable housing needs. How are we going to solve for this? I don't know. I don't know. The city is not going to solve for this without help from the county and the state. I'll just be frank as your city manager. We don't have these resources. We will do what we can to meet the hearing board order and put plans in place to begin working towards this. But that is not a gap we can close independently, especially not considering all of our other challenges as well. So a couple of the questions that came in, who's expected to pay for the permanent supportive housing? And I need to put an asterisk on this slide. This is just the cost to build the units. We haven't even touched yet the cost to operate permanent supportive housing. So that's a whole nother layer. So I don't know. I don't know. I can tell you for sure the city does not have the resources to do that. Some of the questions Does House Bill 1220 require permanent supportive housing is actually built and running, or only that there is a zone where it can be placed? I would say that the bill says we need to be planning for and making progress toward. There is a check-in required by the state at 5 years, which will be in 2029, where King County cities and other cities in our planning group will have to tell the state where we are in addressing these gaps. So then your next question is going to be, well, then what? We don't actually know the then what. But I do know between now and 2029, many other cities will be doing this analysis that we've had to do, and we will start to have more information about the total cost estimate of the requirements of House Bill 1220 across the state of Washington. Let's see, Jeff. Is the city considering eminent domain to meet the requirements of the Gross Management Hearing Board ruling? So eminent domain speaks to a process local governments can use to acquire property. The council did discuss directly providing affordable housing, which would mean perhaps using land that we currently own to meet some of this need. But no decisions have been made. And I can also say we have not talked about acquiring additional property to close this gap. What I would anticipate would be a scenario is we'd establish a fee in lieu program, begin to build up some resources, and then look to partner with an affordable housing provider, somebody that has expertise in the development of units. That's one scenario. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but just to be clear, the city is not looking right now to buy land in the town center. Jeff, a comment. Maybe there's a question in here. As a landowner in the Mercer Island Town Center, how will property development ever be attained if the current onerous requirements for redevelopment prohibits an economically feasible project? I'm guessing that has to do with building height, which we talked about. There will be an upzone applied this year to town center. And it further says, without upgrading of zoning in particular, our zoning redevelopment will never happen and there will not be increases in affordable housing units. So I think we covered that we are planning for an upzone. Did you want to
Mhm.
say anything else to that?
No, I mean, I think the one other thing I'll mention quickly, that inclusionary zoning requirement of 10%, it is actually 15% in our development code currently, and our consultant has recommended that it actually goes back to 10%, which is what it was originally. And that is based on their analysis to help the feasibility of new development.
All right, there was a question about required upzones. I think we covered that in the previous slide or in a previous discussion. Let's see, Jeff, did you have some more slides? And then I can come back to the rest of these questions.
Yeah, just real quick, we can wrap up here. Next steps, let's go to the next slide, please. This is just the project schedule as we know it currently. So again, this Friday, March 13th, any public feedback you may have on the station sub-area boundary, you can go to our Let's Talk page and submit your feedback there. Um, in the rest of March and moving into April, there's going to be a couple, at least a few more council work sessions to get further direction on the station area, sub-area planning, adequate provisions, and anti-displacement measures. And then we'll be moving in April into the Planning Commission part of this effort. And the Planning Commission is responsible for review and public hearings and recommendation on any changes to the comprehensive plan and development regulations. Ultimately, the Planning Commission does their work, and that results in a recommendation to the City Council. So then we'll be going back to the council with the Planning Commission's recommendation. We anticipate in June at some point, and the City Council will have June and the month of July to do their work and to meet the July 31 GMA compliance due date. What happens after we submit everything, all of our work to the Growth Management Hearings Board? They actually reconvene to have a compliance hearing, and that hearing is scheduled for September 15th. And with that, that actually concludes the slide deck.
Let's go back to the map real quick, Madeline. Got some questions on that. All right, Jeff. Oh, I just lost it. Hmm.
Second from the bottom.
Yeah. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, there it is. Is the MF2 zone included in the dark purple zone on the step 3 slide?
Yes.
Yes. Curious to learn more about what residential areas in the light purple area would look like with these revisions. So I think before you answer that, I do want to caveat and say that although we're planning to comply with the transit oriented development bill, we like to shorten it to TOD. That is future work. So Jeff can probably share a little bit about what we anticipate. But I don't want to be too committal because we have broken the phasing out.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is we don't know. The longer answer is this entire area, phase one plus phase two combined, to be ultimately compliant with House Bill 1491, the TOD bill, we will have to demonstrate to the state that we have achieved an average of 3.5 FAR throughout the entire combined phase one and phase two area. Um, this is a lot more complicated than we can go into this evening. We're still using number of stories to identify final height. So rezone to 8 stories. All of our town center zone currently, all of our town center area in our current development regulations is all zoned by stories. There will have to be a conversion done from stories to floor area ratio FAR for 2029. Um, it's kind of like converting between imperial and metric units. And then there's going to have to be a bunch of analysis done on trying to figure out what the lavender area is ultimately going to look like based on what the zoning is in the darker purple area at that time when we do the work. So there's a lot of work that has to happen between now and being able to produce any sort of accurate answer to that question.
Yeah, I think I would just plain language that to say that the state passed a bill, House Bill 1491, last year that said we have to take, or I guess it was 2 years ago, that said we have to take density in the area that is both dark purple and light purple. And there's still more work to be done to figure out what that looks like. I know this is a really high area of concern for our community. And, you know, I appreciate the city council helping us break this phase out so that we can spend a little more time working on this. There's also a question regarding parking changes in this area. And if you have familiarity with this TOD bill, it does restrict our ability, it limits our ability in terms of the number of parking requirements, number of parking spots we can require per unit. It also provides, it gives us the opportunity to do a study and to basically appeal that. What I'll share with all of you is the TOD bill is still pretty hot off the presses, and we are waiting for the State of Washington Department of Commerce to provide us with guidance. Basically, their job is to take the bill that was passed, unpack it, and tell the cities how to implement it. That guidance has not come yet. And so we are not going to start working on any of the TOD work until that guidance has come. That is part of what caused us some problems with the previous comprehensive plan. So I'm not in a position, or is Jeff tonight, to answer the questions about implementation of the TOD bill or future parking impacts. That really is being moved to a second phase. And I appreciate the questions because I think this is mostly what we're hearing, not only areas of concern. A moment ago, Jeff, when we showed, let's see, Madeline, do you want to go back to the staggering number slide? We were talking, Jeff was talking about the cost of implementing affordable housing, and he mentioned that we haven't run the cost estimates yet for the infrastructure impacts. As you all are probably aware, we have a number of utilities we run: water, sewer, stormwater. We certainly have roads, sidewalks, parks. PSE is here, others. So we have not added to these costs any estimate for what it's going to take to upgrade the infrastructure to take all of this density. That is something the staff team is working on right now. It will take us the better part of the next 12 to 18 months. We will have more information as we start working on the TOD bill. So my hope is we can get that work done and have a more complete cost estimate to share with the state, so that they understand the impacts more wholly, the impacts of the implementation of House Bill 1220. Okay, Jeff, this is an implementation question. I think it's a good one. Do we have to meet the requirements with newly constructed housing units? So do we have to meet the affordable housing requirements only through newly constructed housing? Or could we meet affordability requirements by implementing land use regulatory agreements on existing units, establishing them as affordable under the AMI guidelines? And the comment is that it may be worth pursuing that. That might be less expensive.
It is possible, yes.
All right. I've already covered that one. This is this is a little tougher to answer. Let's pretend what the state is asking is impossible. Um, it's kind of feeling like that as your city manager. Let me be candid. How would the state enforce this?
Well, that's a good question for a lawyer, but the short answer, I believe, is once we go to the growth board in September and have the compliance hearing, if they find that we are still out of compliance with their original order from last year, they will, I imagine, I believe it's an additional order will be issued, and the city will have to evaluate whatever that additional order is and make a decision at that point on what to do about it. Um, there is state law around being non-compliant with GMA. It can lead to sanctions from the state and ultimately the governor, withholding of different taxes, such as real estate excise tax, for example, distributions, liquor taxes and the such, ineligibility for state grants. So there are a number of different sanctions that could be applied to a jurisdiction. Ultimately, if it got to that point, sales taxes would be um, another one of those taxes that could uh, be withheld as part of a distribution withheld as part of a sanction.
Um, I will emphasize, I have some comments here that I'm not going to read out loud. Just, some frustration being expressed. I do encourage, all of you to talk to your state legislators. I am, as I've said a couple of times, I'm pretty sure we are the first city to have done this analysis, and that's partially because we were appealed. So we're front of the line, and I know other cities will be coming behind us. Doing this type of analysis, and these numbers are big. We're into the billions uh, statewide, just based on some quick math. So talk to your legislators. Ethically, I can't respond to those questions that are coming in here, but I encourage you to stay engaged with the state and King County Council, and certainly your own city members. I had two more questions come in regarding parking in the TOD zone. And I do want to just acknowledge, I live here on Mercer Island as well. I'm very aware that island-wide, we did not, over the decades that the island was being developed, we have some very narrow roads, and even our right-of-way and shoulders are narrow. And so as the state regulations have changed, and basically preclude us from maintaining on-site parking requirements the way we have done in some areas of the city. Uh, we agree that that is a really tough changes to implement. The city, your previous city council, current city council, we pushed back pretty hard on the state as those bills were rolling out. We weren't successful. The TOD bill, as I've already mentioned, does make an allowance for us to study the area. That study has not started. It will not start until we actually have a report back from the State Department of Commerce talking about how that study can be done. I do not want to go blindly into a study and then be surprised by the requirements later. So that is a future body of work. We share your concern. So we'll keep on that. You can anticipate as that work starts that we'll be sharing more information and community feedback as well. Uh, let's see. Do you plan to meet with individual? Actually, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask for a quick screen share flip. Earlier, we showed you a table that was it was a compressed table, and several of you caught that the columns weren't adding up. So what I'm going to do is have Madeline stop screen sharing, and Allison, who's sitting to my right, our Deputy Director of Community Development, is actually going to screen share the full table. Just
one moment. Let me just pop this on.
all right. So here's and then I'm going to show you in just a moment our Let's Talk page. So earlier in the deck, we showed you a compressed table, and I want to thank all of you that were doing great math and said, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. We hit a couple of columns just to fit it onto the slide, but I'll show you where to find all this. This is a slide that was presented with a huge data set to the City Council on February 17th. All those materials are on our Let's Talk page. And if you're interested, you can even go watch the meeting presentation because our consultant, Community Attributes, delivered most of the presentation. Okay, so there's the full table. Allison, I'll have you take that down. And then I will have you show our Let's Talk page real quick.
Okay, let me reshare that.
Here it comes.
Okay, so
Actually, hold on a sec. All right. There we go. I'll take it. You've heard me talk a couple times tonight about our Let's Talk page. If you're not familiar with it, this is a platform we use. It's in addition to the city's website. It allows us to, when we're working on a major project, to be sharing information, upcoming dates, articles, and also all the material being presented. So the website there is at the top. The tile or the topic is Comprehensive Plan GMA Compliance. And you can see as Allison's scrolling down, right on the right, there's a category called Document Library. So on January 16th, we first presented to the council a similar deck that was presented to you tonight. February 17th, we presented a large data set. You saw a very condensed version tonight. We have the hearings board order also here. And then later today, we'll be posting, or tomorrow, the slide deck from tonight's meeting. Several of you have said, how do we provide comments? For this type of work, we prefer that it come through the Let's Talk page right there where it says leave a comment. I know your city council would also love to hear from you. We've advised them that the best way to do that is formally through our council meetings or through this page. And we will continue as the work progresses to be posting updates here. We will have additional meetings. We may have additional informational seminars like this as well. All right, Allison, I think we can take that down. Okay. Jeff, this is probably a question that you can help me with. Is it possible to recharacterize AMI as a small area AMI for zip code 98040 rather than the King County AMI number, similar to the way HUD approaches things? And I think the answer to that is that was already done, right? King County gets a big number and then they assign all of the units to us. Did you want to just walk through how those assignments again?
Yeah. So you're right. King County received essentially numbers from the state, and then they need to go and they need to allocate those numbers to each of the respective jurisdictions within King County, including the unincorporated area. So, in terms of, I'm not sure I understood the question correctly. It sounded like maybe the question was in part based. Can we go and develop new AMI, maybe particulars or definitions? I'm not sure if that was what the question was trying to get at. That's not something I have direct knowledge of, but that's certainly something we could dig in to try and produce some sort of answer in the written script.
I I would not be surprised, this is a little speculative thinking, as the other cities get further along with this work, that there may not be some sort of a call to action to revisit the numbers and the assignments, but I can't say for sure certain that that's going to happen. And I'm not anticipating that our numbers are going to change at this point. This question's been in here for just a little while. My understanding is Kirkland is largely in compliance, partly because they have allowed cottage clusters and have reduced minimum lot sizes. Are we looking to do something similar while, of course, trying to maintain our community feel and needs?
Yeah, we adopted provisions at the end of June last year to meet another state compliance deadline for House Bill 1110. And we introduced a variety of different housing forms into um, our development code that can be built throughout the island. It was called the Middle Housing Bill. Um, we did not specifically cottage clusters was not a specific housing form that we put into the interim regulations last year. That was at council's direction. Um, Council believed that there was going to be some additional analysis required on that particular housing form. So that was not one of the, oh, 7 or 8, I believe, or 9 different housing forms that were brought forward into the middle housing interim regulations. But that is something that once this GMA compliance effort is over with, we'll be going back and working on permanent regulations for middle housing, and cottage clusters will actually be specifically looked at that point in time because the council asked us to. So,
Thanks for that. I think this next question we may have covered, but I'll raise it up again. It says you mentioned the key thing, which is that the private market will not build this many below average income units. We said that a couple times. Is there some responsibility for the city to cause them to be built or only to make the laws that permit the building? The way we're understanding the directives from the state and the previous legislation is it's somewhere in between. We've been directed to plan for it and make progress
mhm.
using a number of tools. That's that term, adequate provisions, inclusionary zoning, some of the things we talked about tonight. And there will be a progress check-in at the 5-year mark from the time everyone's comprehensive plans were adopted. So the question we all have as city administrators is, well, what happens then at the check-in? And Jeff, I don't know that we know that. We'll be talking to the Department of Commerce and evaluating where all the cities are at that point.
We're all going to find out together, is what it sounds like.
Okay. Is there any possibility of many cities saying we can't realistically do this and they change House Bill 1220 to something more reasonable? I can tell you, we're already saying we can't reasonably do this. I don't know what that means in terms of long-term planning. I think as other cities start to assemble this data and we see the numbers that are truly staggering across the state, I'm hopeful there will be a much larger conversation with the state of Washington and the counties about how we actually deliver this. Cities are not going to be able to do this. I count Mercer Island as a smaller city. we don't have the resources to do this. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that?
Not over and above your thoughts. No.
All right. Do you plan to meet with individual town center property owners to see what adequate provisions would be mutually acceptable? So what I'd like to do is, I just pointed to the Let's Talk page. I'd like to invite people to submit comments and ideas there. If you'd like to meet with us, we can do so. I will tell you there's some guardrails that we have to put on discussions around zoning in particular. We take zoning decisions very seriously and want them to be fair and transparent. And so both the staff and the city council will limit our discussions with property owners specifically to upzones and those types of decisions. We want that dialogue to happen in our council chambers in an open public meeting. Jeff, do you have any other thoughts on how people could connect with us or provide feedback? And certainly, please come to the council meeting. We have open public comment at the beginning of the meeting. It's your opportunity to share with the council your thoughts. If you're not able to come here in person, we do offer remote testimony as well.
Yeah, I think just quickly, everything we've talked about tonight doesn't exist in reality yet. It's in the formulation stage. So if you're a town center property owner watching tonight, we're happy to take your feedback in the short term. Once these things actually become enacted and become part of our comprehensive plan and part of our development code, we're happy to meet with you to discuss. We do pre-application meetings all the time. We're happy to meet to talk about a potential project and what tools that are in our code would be potentially appropriate for something you might be looking to do.
Yeah, I know we fielded some questions from property owners that were considering a development plan and they heard this news and they've had to pause. So again, I would say if you're in the getting ready to go mode, certainly use our tools through the planning department for that pre-application meeting. That would be the best way for us to formally support you. Okay, Jeff, this next question names a specific property in the city, so I'm not going to name it. But the question is, if the affordable housing requirement, do we need to meet it in the walkable TOD area, or if there were properties outside of the map we showed that could potentially meet affordability requirements, could we count it?
Could could we count? Would it count towards our affordable housing target? Is that the question?
Yeah, like
Or yeah, yes,
yeah,
it would.
yeah, thank you.
Yes, it would. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and just sensitivity to property owners. I prefer not to name specific properties when we answer that requirement. But if there's an affordability program or a property is interested in an apartment or something, interested in a different and being part of an affordability program, I guess is what I'm trying to say as I stumble through my words. Certainly we would like to know and love to engage on that, even if the property sits outside of that boundary area we showed you a moment ago. All right, this is a feedback question. In the leave a comment section on the Let's Talk page, is that the same thing as the public feedback period ending March 13th? Yes, so we have asked for community members, property owners to provide feedback on the draft station area map. And that is where we prefer to receive it on the Let's Talk page. I just want to assure you, as you're leaving your comments on the Let's Talk page, we are gathering them up and they will all be presented to the council in full. So that's the easiest way for the record keeping to happen. I know we've gotten a couple comments, emails into the council, which we will also migrate over to that list. But the Let's Talk page is the easiest way for us to handle that. All right. That concludes our list of questions. pause just a moment. I want to say thank you for those of you that stayed with us for the whole presentation. I apologize again for the technical challenges we had at the beginning and all the computer and shuffling we were doing on our end. We recognize this material is very dense. We've been sitting with it for a couple years now, and more recently, following the hearing board order, pretty much every day of our life. So we welcome you to review everything that we have on the Let's Talk page. Reach out if you have questions, if there's some additional information we can provide. Please do. I want to say on behalf of the City Council, I know some of them are probably watching tonight. They want you to come to the meeting and want you to be engaged. So please come join us for these discussions. Jeff and I are anticipating that we will be in front of the council at least once a month on this work all the way through the end of July. So it's getting a lot of our attention. The city council agendas are published on our website. We have an agenda notification list that we can also get you subscribed to. I can probably put that on the Let's Talk page too, just to make it all easy for you. All right. Thank you again for hanging with us. I will say have a good evening, and we appreciate you for being here tonight.